freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis, and the problems associated with it. Character does matter. That's why the program is titled that. Character matters more than just about anything else when you think about it. When you think of all the problems that we have, you think of all the challenges that face us, there really isn't a law or a regulation that we can pass that will make everything okay. Because they all depend, every rule that we make, every law that we pass, every regulation that we try to enforce, they all depend upon the willing compliance of people of good character. That's what makes it all work. That's what can make our country great. And I blog about this, I write about this, and talk about it every single week here, and hope you'll join the discussion if you have a mind to, by giving us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I know some of you have had some problems calling in the last couple of weeks. We are doing our best to troubleshoot why that is. It seems that sometimes calls are blocked from being accepted. I'm not sure why. Some of the folks, I recognize the phone numbers. I don't know who they belong to. But some of the folks who have had troubles getting through in the past have actually gotten through at times. So what I would advise you to do, if you have any trouble at all getting through, and I seem to indicate that on the air, please hang up and give it a bit and try your call again. We'll do our best to undo any glitches that might develop tonight, technically, but that might help if you just can't get through the first time. For some reason, there's a difficulty, just hang up and then try again later. And I'm happy to take your call. Tonight we're going to be talking about primarily, I hope, a series of articles that I'm posting on. The lead article started this past Friday on my blog at www.manipulative-people.com. The series that I'm going to be talking about over the next several weeks is on the importance of trust in any relationship, the importance of trust, period. In our age of rampant manipulation and deceit, perhaps nothing is as important as that. As a therapist, a veteran therapist of many years, I can tell you without any question that more relationships that I care to count, hit the skids because of trust betrayals, significant trust betrayals. And when these kinds of things occur, it's not enough. It's not enough to just apologize, and it's not enough to hope that the other person will just move on and forgive and forget. Once trust has been violated in a relationship, it takes a lot to restore it. And that's where many relationships run into trouble. Many times the person who's violated the trust of a partner doesn't want to do the hard work that it takes to restore that trust. They simply want to be forgiven. They want things to just go on as usual. And it just doesn't work that way because trust is the foundation of any relationship. It works that way in therapy, too. I'll have some things to say about that in just a minute. But at any rate, that's what I've been writing about. That's what the next series of articles is going to be about on my blog, starting with the first post of last Friday. So you'll find the series at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com, which, by the way, is presently undergoing a bit of a facelift. And let me explain for the blog readers out there, and for those of you who may be venturing to the blog for the first time, maybe you have been on the blog for a number of years, fans of the blog, reading the articles, sometimes making comments on the articles. Perhaps you've noticed the changes, and perhaps you've been dismayed by some of the changes. Maybe you're a little concerned about what's going on because things don't look the same as always. Maybe it looks like some of the functionality has changed. Maybe some of the features that you liked are no longer working the same way they did, and you have concerns about it. Well, let me give you some information about that. The blog is under major construction right now. We are going to be going to a multi-site type format that will incorporate my website, my blog for Manipulative People, and also some other services that I plan to offer on the internet. So we'll have a vastly new and expanded presence on the internet, and that's a good thing. But in the meantime, we're doing some renovations, and what has been done most recently, the most recent renovation, is not a permanent renovation, but an interim one. And one of the things that was done was that the overall layout and theme of the blog was changed to the way it looks and appears on your screen. And the reason for that is that the original theme or the original format of the blog was not very friendly to people accessing the blog on their mobile devices of one type or another, either their iPhone or iPad or Galaxy tablet or Surface Pro or whatever the case may be. So that was one update, and in so doing that, some of the technical features of the blog have been altered, and some folks have written me and made comment on the blog that they'd like to see those things restored. Well, we're working on that. This was just a first step, and I'm afraid to say that construction is actually going to go on now for a couple of months. But in a couple of months, we'll have a great new and expanded look. We'll have products available that people have asked me for years. For example, many people who have fallen in love with the theme song for this program. America, My Home, as it's more commonly known, the anthem for the millennium that my wife and I wrote back in 1999. As this song becomes increasingly popular and as people perform it all over the country, we get more and more requests for the music. And the original publisher of the music was not that great about marketing and getting information out there. I know some of the links on the internet were broken to access material. Well, in the very near future, you'll be able to download MP3s for performance tracks. You'll also be able to get a hold of sheet music, various arrangements, etc., just by pressing a button. You'll also be able to pay for the licensing fees for these things by just hitting a button on the blog, too. So many things are going to be happening there. Several folks have written me, emailed me, phoned me, and asked me if they could please have access to the worksheets that I sometimes talk about that I used for years in my practice to help both the victims of in relationships with disturbed characters and also with disturbed characters who were not so severely disturbed that there wasn't some hope that they could change. And those worksheets will also be available. So there'll be a lot of updates. There'll be a lot of new functionality to the blog. I hope you pay us a visit to www.manipulative-people.com. You'll find a treasure trove of information there. A lot of information about how to deal with the basically the no-goodniks in your life, the folks who cause you no ends of grief in one way or another, the manipulators, the antisocials, the sociopaths, the narcissists, the individuals who drive you a little bit crazy, the controllers, these folks, and the abusers and exploiters. These folks are all explained. There's many articles, hundreds of articles on how to understand these folks, how to deal with these folks, how to recover from toxic relationships with these kind of folks, how to empower yourself at work, at home, in your relationships in general. All kinds of information available 24/7 on the manipulative-people.com blog. And I also, as you may or may not know, write for another blog, a very popular blog based in the UK called Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life. And its URL is www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling with two L's, counselingresource.com. Many articles that I've written, hundreds of articles actually, for that blog too. Not just on the regular blog feature, but also on a special feature called Ask the Psychologist. Now, I stopped writing the answers to Ask the Psychologist about 2 years ago, so you won't find my timely tips unless you go back a couple of years, but you'll find years worth of commentary and answers to common questions on that feature on the counselingresource.com blog. So pay a visit to either one of the blogs and access the wealth of information there. Also, my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller, soon to be in yet another foreign language. I'll have more information on that when the contract is signed and all is well on that score. and also my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. This book is a meaty book that's an in-depth study of the very phenomenon of our time, character disturbance. It not only tells you how to deal with the manipulative folks in your life, it not only explains those types, but it gives you an in-depth look into all the various character types and all of those folks who are to some degree character impaired and will make your life challenging, if not miserable. It helps you understand what these folks are really like, how they operate, how to deal with them effectively, how to empower yourself, what to look for, especially when you go looking for professional help, what kinds of things will and won't work, how to know, how to be prepared, what things to watch out for when you're shopping, so to speak, for a shrink. All this material is in sheep's clothing, is in Character Disturbance, along with some illustrative vignettes to give you an idea of how things should go if you're trying to get help. So both of those books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance, are pretty much must-reads. As a matter of fact, when folks go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or download the Kindles, almost inevitably, folks who purchase In Sheep's Clothing also purchase Character Disturbance, because it just fills you in on all the rest of the information that you need to know. A helpful, handy resource for understanding and dealing with the phenomenon of our time. And then lastly, my book, The Judas Syndrome, which is tailored to the Christian faith community. This is a book that challenges folks who claim to follow the Lord, to live up to their creed. And it illustrates through vignettes how our lack of genuine faith is betrayed, just like Judas betrayed Jesus. Our lack of genuine faith is betrayed in our actions, by our actions, many times, and I have illustrative vignettes about that. So that's my effort to deal with the character crisis that we face. I also have some big announcements coming about some new products that will be on the way, some new books that are in development that should be available shortly and will be available readily through both blogs when the time comes. And I'll have more announcements on that as we get closer to publication date. I can give you a little sneak preview. The first book that's going to come out is going to be kind of a handbook, a survival guide for folks who find themselves in situations dealing with folks of various types of character disturbance and how to make the decision. This is really key in many difficult relationships. How do you know whether there's any salvation available in this relationship? In other words, how do you know if the relationship is salvageable? How do you know if there's any chance that the person that you're dealing with is going to be able to change? And if so, how are you going to accomplish that? Well, this is going to be the handbook to help folks decide that. Do I stay or do I go? What am I dealing with here? How do I deal with it the most effectively? That's what's coming in the first book. And then another book coming down the pike is one that I've been asked about countless times at workshops and seminars and through email inquiries and comments on the blog, people asking all the time when I might write such a book. With this book is going to be an expansion on the topics that I introduced in character disturbance about how we need to go about the process of forming good character in our young folks, how we need to go about the process of instilling in them the kind of character that will not only serve them well and help them prosper as individuals, but will serve the greater good, will serve the community well, that will enable them to establish decent relationships and fulfill their obligations. So those two are forthcoming. I'll have more to tell you on that. I'll also have more to tell you in just a few short weeks, a whole lot more detail to give you on an upcoming webinar that will be held in the end of September. I do know now that the format, the platform that we will probably be using for this webinar is GoToWebinar. And we will have on the blog very shortly a payment key for those who want to advance register for the blog, or excuse me, for the seminar. As I said, it will be in late September, and the fee is going to be very affordable because this webinar is going to be, as most of my workshops and seminars are always designed to be, not just a helpful resource to professionals trying to deal with this phenomenon of character disturbance, but also a very down-to-earth, helpful, illustrative, point-by-point workshop designed to empower the average individual who's in a problem relationship or who has been in a problem relationship and is trying to recover. And it's going to have interactive capability. So you'll be able to ask your questions. You'll be able to share experiences. You'll be able to get instantaneous feedback. And as I said, I'm going to do my best to make this quite affordable. The more people we have attending the webinar, the more affordable it's going to become. And we already have about 45 folks who have indicated that they want to sign up. If we have over 50 folks sign up in advance and register, then I can assure you that the fees, even for late registrants, will be very reasonable. So more to come on that. You'll find more information at the manipulative-people.com blog very shortly. And I sure hope that you have a mind to participate. It will be a helpful and informative presentation, I can assure you. And you'll also be able to get the PowerPoints that will accompany the presentation. You'll also be able to get the podcast, the recording of the presentation. So, I mean, I can't tell you, this is going to be a great webinar. As I said, it'll be at the end of September, more complete details to be coming in just the next couple of weeks. And once again, if you want to join the conversation here at Character Matters, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. I mentioned at the beginning of the program that I wanted to talk, especially tonight, about the topic that I began posting on last Friday on the manipulative-people.com blog. And this is about honesty and trust. Trust in particular. And the importance of it in any relationship. Now, I can tell you that as a veteran therapist who practiced for many years, and who practiced not just dealing with individuals of impaired characters, but also individuals who are trying to survive in relationships with problem characters. I can tell you that absolutely nothing is more important to the success of a therapeutic relationship than trust. And the same is true of any relationship. But let me just talk just a bit about a therapeutic relationship and the importance of trust. You know, folks need to believe that someone trying to help them holds them in some high regard, in some reasonable regard. And even if they disagree with them, or even if they find things with them that probably need some correction, that they will do no harm, and that they will accept the person where they are and do their best to facilitate growth. Basically, a person has to know that they're in honest, reliable hands. They have to be able to trust. It's just that simple. It's the fundamental aspect of any relationship, but it's absolutely crucial when it comes to a therapeutic relationship. And one of the things that I have found, and this is something that I say at workshops all the time to professionals, and we'll be making a point of, perhaps, even in the upcoming webinar. But one of the mistakes that is frequently made by not just naive therapists or counselors, but by counselors who really aren't all that well versed in the specialized art, the highly specialized art of dealing with character disturbance. One of the things that they just don't seem to get sometimes is that when we don't have the courage to call out the elephant in the room, to name it accurately, to basically nail down the problem behavior, to call it for what it is, not to candy coat it, not to give it a fancy label, not to provide a built-in excuse for it, but to call it out for what it is. When we don't do that, and we're dealing with a manipulative character or some other disturbed character, they cannot possibly trust us. Because A, it's clear we don't know what we're talking about, or we do know what we're talking about, but we refuse to be honest about it. In other words, we put such a positive spin on things out of some fear of ours that we can't be trusted to tell the truth. And when we do that, for example, when we say interpret some severely impaired characters' habitual disregard of relationship partners and lack of a maintenance of any kind of fidelity in relationship. They've messed around and played around constantly. They've exploited, used, and abused their partner. And let's say that we try to frame this as an issue of fear of commitment or insecurity, having something to prove. Let's say we try and frame it in that way. The person who's doing these things, who knows better than that, they regard us as quite playable. They regard us as easily manipulatable. And they lose all respect instantaneously. Now they may stick around and enjoy manipulating, enjoy playing basically the therapist. But they certainly won't get any better. They certainly won't change, and they certainly will not have the level of trust that it would take to, and I'm going to use a word very carefully here, they certainly wouldn't have the level of trust that it would take to, quote unquote, submit themselves to the therapist's authoritative guidance. They simply wouldn't do it. Because as far as they're concerned, either the therapist is off base or the therapist does know what the situation really is, but for some reason of their own is afraid to say it. Is afraid to call it. So nothing is more important, especially in working with people of impaired character. Nothing is more important than calling out the problems for what they are and labeling them accurately, as unpleasant as that might be at times. I had a person once smile and just look me dead in the eye and said, "You just told me that I think too much of myself. I can't believe that." What they were remarking about was not that it wasn't true. They later agreed it was quite true. But that I would dare to say it. And they said it that way, and they looked at me in that way because they'd already been through 3 therapists, and nobody had dared to call them on their egomania. Nobody had even ventured to label it such. So, these kinds of things happen from time to time. But in this particular case, this was the beginning, at least, of some trust, because at least each of us knew what we were dealing with. The other person knew that they were dealing with someone who couldn't have the wool pulled over his eyes. And I knew who I was dealing with because I was willing to call it out, and it was admitted and acknowledged by the person with the problem. So this is the basis of trust. Honesty. And here we live in an age where we can't trust anybody anymore, it seems. Especially in the political realm. I mean, the sideshow that is politics gets more hilarious and more entertaining, but more frighteningly dangerous to the country's health as a whole. It gets frighteningly dangerous, more dangerous, every single election season. In fact, the elections never stop. Even after we've made a choice and put some folks into office, the loyal opposition goes to work already trying to pave the way for the ouster of the person who was voted in and usher in someone else. It never ends. The political fight never ends. And the thing that's made it bad is we really need this. America was founded on this multi-party system, and boy, do we desperately need more than these 2 parties that are here. We could really luck out in this next election because there might well be 2 independents that run if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination of the Democrats, it's quite possible that he will run as an independent. And if Donald Trump doesn't get the oh man, we could talk a lot about him. But if he doesn't get the Republican nomination, he's likely to run as an independent also. But we need an independent third or fourth party or even fifth party so badly, because these two main parties of ours are so beholden to their base, and they are so beholden to their high financiers, to the people that buy them and buy their influence, that really it's the contributors, it's the people who finance these elections that really get to call all the shots. And it's we who pay all the taxes that have to bear all the costs of that. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually trust the people that we elect to actually act in our best interest? Wouldn't that be nice? We can't do it. Perfect example. Perfect example. A president is elected, a new president is elected, who says he wants to fundamentally change some things about America. He wants to fundamentally change the face of America. He thinks America is not kind enough. He thinks America is not generous enough to its own citizens, especially the more disadvantaged. And he's sincere about this, we think. And we elect him. And as one of his first projects, he wants to tackle the health care mess. And it is a mess. It's just an absolute mess. Not that we don't have excellent health care when you can get it and when you can afford it. We do. But the system does not work to the advantage of most. Many people in smaller areas can't get immediate access, have to travel for miles. And many folks cannot afford the outrageous prices that we pay for our health care. You know, in the advanced countries around the world, health services are purchasable at much reduced rates than they are here. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So we had somebody who said he wanted to fix it. And in his heart, we know this. We know this because he said it. He got recorded saying it. In his heart, he believes that the only way it's going to work is if there's a single-payer system. And there's a lot of folks who believe that. My jury's still out about that because, frankly, I deal a lot or have dealt a lot with Medicare, which is a single-payer government-run system. And let me tell you, what a nightmare. A nightmare. As some Medicare beneficiaries also know, it can be. So I just want to say that while this was a great idea, that we really need to fix this system, and while the person who wanted to fix it truly believed in his heart that it would only be fixed with a single-payer system, he knew that that wouldn't sell. He knew it wouldn't sell. As a matter of fact, he admitted to the group that he told that this is what he wanted, that it wouldn't sell. So what he had to do is play the game, be dishonest on purpose, acknowledge this to get a foot in the door. And now we have a bigger mess. He made a pact with the devil, so to speak. And even at that, it took a slick maneuver on reconciliation to get this bill known as the Affordable Care Act, which has turned out to be anything but affordable, through Congress. Why? Because they made a deal with the devil. All these exchanges and all these conditions and granting these pools of insureds to these insurance companies, and then agreeing to reimburse them when they ran short. Premiums going crazy. Premiums just costs escalating unbelievably so. And for next year, will be even worse. Some folks saying they need to raise rates anywhere from 20 to 50%. Outrageous. Outrageous. So wouldn't it have been nice if we could have just trusted someone to be square right from the get-go, to be fully honest? Wouldn't it be nice to have a relationship with an elected official whereby you could actually trust what they say? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if all the grand things that they promised to sell these bills of goods to us would actually happen instead of just the opposite? Wouldn't that be nice? It's possible. It's certainly possible. All of us have the capacity to tell the truth. But perhaps there's no more important area of our lives where the trust variable really takes center stage, and that's in our intimate relationships. You've got to be able to trust your life partner. And parents, your children need to be able to trust you too. They need to know not just that you'll be there for them, but they need to know what you stand for and that you're not a hypocrite about it, that you're true to your creed and you're true to your word. They need to know that they can place their care in your care without fear or reservation. That's how trust is built. And it's such a critical aspect of a child's character formation. You know, we are little heathens. We're born little heathens. We are not civilized from birth. Very early on, we learn how to fight for the things that we want and how to manipulate, control, how to cajole various things out of our parents. Very early on, we learn all the tactics we need to get our way. We learn how to lie, cheat, steal. I see we have a caller coming in. I'm going to try and take this call. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Character Matters.
Oh, hi. I phoned last week. I think you're starting to touch on that subject because I was dialing about children and trust and all that stuff.
Yes. Can you think of anything that's more important than trust when you're raising a children?
Well, yeah, trust and respect.
Yeah.
But that all comes with trust, right?
Yes. And the reason I was beginning this discourse on it is because if a child is ever going to basically submit their will to yours, in other words, if they're going to go against their natural inclination to do what they want to do, but if they're going to go against that and adopt the standards of behavior that you want them to adopt, they have to trust not only you and the wisdom of what you're trying to do for them, but they have to trust that you have their best interest at heart. That's
Right.
the only time that in their heart they can make peace with kind of not doing things their way and kind of seeing things your way. But without that trust being there first, there's no way they're going to do that. Is that not your experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about trust, though, you're saying that you have to show your moral fibers yourself, and that's how they learn.
Yes.
So when you're in a marriage or relationship with a character disturbed person,
Yes.
that's undermined a lot, and you put yourself through a lot of things that you normally would not.
Yes.
And I have teenagers. They've seen it all. They've seen the physical abuse. They've seen the verbal abuse. They've seen the whole gamut of it.
Yes.
And I know in my heart that I'm the person they trust because I protected them from it as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I think, their behaviors show me that I'm the person they go to when something's not going on in their life the right way or not happening the way they want it to happen or whatever. But there's that fine line between with trust and respect. Like when you were giving your little example of therapy and that you had to gain respect from the character disturbed person.
Yes.
In my experience with that, there was actually no way of doing that because if you called him on it, he walked out. It wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yes.
And therapy became a joke and all that. As long as they were pointing their finger kind of in a general sense and that I had something bad to, I was to blame in some way as well as him or whatever, then he was fine. But if anything was ever pointed in his direction, he was out of there. And then he got caught still not behaving properly, so he was, all of a sudden it was all a waste of time, it was a joke. The person was useless. On and on it went, right?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about trust with your kids, I don't know how that's measured anymore because my kids have seen so many distrustful things and they've seen me compromise my principles over and over again.
Yeah. What happened the very first time that your relationship partner lost your trust?
I suppose I made excuses for it. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't walk away from it.
Yeah.
Which is what theoretically, and in my head, and if I was speaking to someone else, I know that's what you should do. And if I was giving someone else advice, that's what I would have told them to do. But I found that I did none of those things. I did nothing that I thought.
Yeah, and when you think back on it now, what do you think is the biggest reason why you didn't?
For me, I think it's because I just had such a belief and faith in marriage and families. I just couldn't understand how somebody would want to go against all of that. who said he didn't want to. You know, he had sort of talked the talk that I wanted to hear prior to being married and in the initial beginnings of our marriage. And I just kept having some weird hope that that's really what he wanted.
Yeah. So
why wouldn't he go back to that?
So would it be fair to say that, as I write about in both in Sheep's Clothing and in Character Disturbance, one of the things that put you at a disadvantage is that you just really couldn't comprehend that there would be anybody with such a radically different character, that they wouldn't have the same basic moral sense as you did, and therefore you just couldn't imagine basically that they could be either so callous or shallow or so prone to disregard some of the basic rules of a fundamental relationship.
Yes, although I knew that his father didn't have any of those traits.
Really?
Oh yeah, as they say, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Uh-huh.
For whatever reason, I believe that the apple, wasn't poisoned.
Uh-huh. Looking back at it, seeing as though hindsight is always a little bit more 20/20.
Yeah.
Looking back at it with that big red flag up there, what do you think allowed you to ignore that red flag?
Oh, mostly his words, I guess. You know, he didn't like his father. He didn't like the way his father lived. He didn't like, he didn't want that in his life. He was never going to be that kind of person. He didn't want to be even around those kind of people. So you just think, well, he gets it.
You'll be different, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and I know people that didn't come from the best situations, and they've made, good lives and good marriages and good families.
Right.
So I guess I believed it wasn't fair to judge him based on who his father was.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, being a product of unfortunate circumstances is not a death sentence. It does not condemn you to repeat all of the same things. And there are many people, I've met many remarkable people who in their developmental years were subjected to or witnessed some of the most incredible things. And I asked myself many, many times, how is it that they even survived this background, let alone came out of it with as much integrity of character as they appear to have? So, a long time ago, I came to appreciate the fact that it's not as simple as, your environment shapes you. It's just not that simple.
Yeah.
What's really more important is what's in the character of the person themselves. I'm going to ask you one other tough question here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Was there any red flag now that when you look back at it, was there any red flag that you thought you saw about his character, not his father's character, but about his character that gave you pause?
One incident. My father had a heart attack. I don't know, maybe a year and a half into. I dated my husband for 6 years, so maybe a year and a half into the dating process, my father had a heart attack, and he was in intensive care. In those days, everything didn't happen as quickly, and I live in Canada, so you weren't under the knife immediately.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It takes a little bit of time for the medical process unless it's an emergency. So anyway, he was gray in intensive care. He was all hooked up to a million tubes and everything, and I was crying. This is like 12 hours after this had happened, and he said, "Why are you still crying? It's not like he died. Like, get over it." And he was not out of the woods. Like, I could have walked into him having another heart attack. I mean, he was still in intensive care and still, still being watched closely and everything else. So,
all right. So,
I remember thinking, who says that? Who thinks that way?
Right. And so what did you say to yourself after that? Because there was the big red flag. And you said, there's got to be something wrong here because normal, healthy people don't respond that way. They don't think that way, right? So,
well, that's what I thought. But then,
right.
then it's like that. Or then his mother, who was in the other room, came in and said, "Yeah, really, like it's not like he died." Like, because I was 21 years old. My father was 55 years old. You're not thinking your father is, you kind of think at that age they're going to be around forever.
Yeah.
So it was a little shocking for me. And so his mother came in and qualified what he said. So then I thought, well, I guess I'm making a bigger deal of it than I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't do that around. I mean, I had other people I would, be upset around.
Yeah.
But I wasn't upset around him anymore. So
yeah, in the interest of time, we really can't follow up on that. But what you described there is exactly what I talk about in both books about not trusting your gut judgment, not giving adequate credence to your gut feelings about things, and maybe regarding yourself as overly sensitive and maybe overly judgmental of the other person, letting your conscientiousness basically get the better of you. Yeah. But you had a big red flag there for this person's empathy level and their trustworthiness, right?
Yeah.
And you allowed yourself to ignore it for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That kind of reinforces for people listening some of the things that I've mentioned in several articles on the blog. By the way, do you visit the blog?
Yes, yeah. Yes, I do.
Great. Well, I thank you for calling in. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about? We have about a minute left.
No. It's good you're talking about trust and respect too. I'd like to see a little bit of that in there because I find that's a huge thing.
I got a whole series planned on respect, both for the blog and for the program. As soon as we get done with the trust issue, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Yes, they do. I agree.
And in my books, I make a big point about what respect really is all about, and how it has to be. And people don't like this these days. They don't like this concept. How it has to be earned. But we will definitely talk about that.
It also has to be understood. I don't think people actually understand what respect is.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for calling in. I appreciate your call.
Yeah, and thanks so much for making yourself available to all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Well, we're winding down here, getting close to the end of the hour. I encourage you to visit the blog at manipulative-people.com, and also my website at drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorgesimon.com. YouTube for the Anthem for the Millennium, America My Home, and right here on Character Matters next week. See you then. I'm Dr. George Simon. Good night.